The night air lay still over Maplewood Avenue, the only illumination a soft amber glow cast by antique street lamps. A sleek black sedan glided along the quiet two-lane road, its engine notes subdued beneath the hush of suburban calm. Inside the car, Judge Cassandra Monroe sat perfectly poised behind the wheel, her posture composed even as the world outside blurred past at 45 miles per hour, 5 over the posted limit. Her dark auburn hair was pulled into a neat chignon, and the tailored navy pantsuit she wore spoke of both authority and subtle elegance. A leather briefcase rested on the passenger seat, its polished brass clasp catching the lamplight each time the car undulated over a slight rise in the pavement. Through the windshield, manicured hedges and white picket fences slid by, punctuated by neatly trimmed lawns and the occasional parked SUV. Without warning, a pair of bright blue strobe lights flared to life behind her, snapshots of electric cerulean that turned the rear-view mirror into a kaleidoscope. Cassandra's gaze lifted calmly. She placed one hand softly on the steering wheel and the other on the gear shift, easing the car onto the narrow shoulder. The tires crunched over gravel as she rolled to a stop just past a faded crosswalk. Her heart rate remained steady. Years on the bench had taught her the value of composure. Outside, the patrol car's engine cut, and the red and blue pulses continued their silent rhythm across the sedan's glossy rear fender. A steel-clad figure emerged from the driver's side, uniform crisp and duty belt gleaming under the street lamp. Cassandra switched off her headlights, the interior falling into shadow except for the pale glow of the dashboard clock. 12:07 a.m. She settled her briefcase neatly on her lap, folded her hands, and turned her profile toward the driver's window. The street was deserted except for a lone cat darting behind a hedge and the distant hum of an air conditioner. In that suspended moment, engine off, lights flashing, Cassandra Monroe met the officer's flashlight beam with a measured calm that belied the urgency of the night. The gears of protocol clicked into place on both sides of the glass, setting the stage for an encounter neither would soon forget. The officer's heavy boots crunched on the gravel shoulder as he approached the driver's side window, flashlight in one hand and a breath-steadying calm in the other. Through the amber glow of the street lamp, he could make out the sedan's immaculate exterior. Paint so deep and lustrous it seemed to swallow the light, rims polished to a mirror finish, and tires that looked nearly new. He glanced at the license plate, personalized, terse letters spelling out C. Monroe. As he neared the car, the officer's flashlight beam swept across the interior. Leather seats stitched with cream thread, a gleaming wood-trimmed dash, an engraved nameplate on the passenger side glove box. Honors. Cassandra Monroe. He blinked once, uncertain. But professionalism prevailed. He rapped on the rolled-down window with a gloved knuckle. "Ma'am, good evening," he said, voice firm but polite. "May I see your driver's license and registration, please?" He extended a hand, the beam of his flashlight steady on her hands folded calmly atop the steering wheel. Through the glass, he observed her tranquil composure, shoulders relaxed, spine straight, eyes meeting his without a flicker of apprehension. Her tailored navy jacket was unbuttoned just enough to reveal a crisp white blouse, and a silver judicial pin gleamed at her lapel. He noted the expensive leather briefcase beside her, the kind usually reserved for high-powered attorneys or executives. She slid the license and registration across the narrow gap. The officer's fingers felt the smooth plastic and heavy cardstock as he examined the documents under the torch's glow. The license photo matched the face before him. Sharp cheekbones, intelligent brown eyes, a hint of sternness softened by composed dignity. The registration bore the dealership's name of a luxury car importer, and the VIN matched the sedan's window sticker. He returned the registration but hesitated over her license. Something about the embossed state seal felt thicker than usual. His training whispered caution. "Always verify." He cleared his throat. "Do you know why I pulled you over, ma'am?" She tilted her head slightly, lips curving in a polite, knowing smile. "I believe it was for speeding, officer." He nodded, flicked his gaze back to his notebook, and toggled his radio mic to call in her information. Each second stretched as he spoke her name and license number into the handset. He caught a glimpse of her wristwatch, a luxury timepiece, and noted the time stamped on his patrol log, 12:09 a.m. While the radio crackled with dispatch's acknowledgement, he swept his flashlight across the car once more. The polished surfaces gleamed like sentinels in the night. Yet despite the evidence of wealth and status, her posture remained unassuming. The quiet confidence unsettled him. As the dispatcher confirmed no warrants or alerts, the officer felt the rigid protocol at his back. Step out of the car, verify identity, maintain control. He cleared his throat again, frustration and curiosity warring in his mind. "Please step out of the vehicle so we can complete this stop," he said, steadying his tone for compliance rather than confrontation. In the soft hum of the night, his flashlight beam lingered on her calm face, as if daring her to reveal who she truly was. The patrol car's door swung closed with a sharp snap, and the officer's authoritative voice cut through the midnight stillness like a hail of gravel. "Step out of the car now!" he ordered, his tone firm enough to silence the chirping cicadas along the hedgerows. Judge Monroe's hand paused on the leather briefcase as the command reverberated against the sedan's windows. She met the officer's glare through the glass, her dark eyes steady beneath the street lamp's halo. Outside, the patrolling cruiser's headlights cast long, angular shadows across the asphalt, and the house facades lay silent and dark beyond the glow. With deliberate calm, she released her seatbelt, its click sounding unnaturally loud in the tense air, and placed one hand flat against the steering wheel. The leather rim felt cool under her palm. She pushed back her chair, the seat gliding effortlessly, and swung her legs out onto the gravel shoulder. Her heels landed softly yet with purpose, the sound muffled by the loose stones. She straightened, smoothing the lapels of her navy jacket as if adjusting a courtroom bench rather than preparing for a roadside encounter. The briefcase remained clasped in her left hand. In her right, she rested her fingertips lightly against the car door. The officer's beam followed her every movement, illuminating the tailored lines of her pantsuit and the small judicial pin at her collar. Behind her, the cruiser's lights pulsated, a warning beacon in the deserted suburban street. The evening breeze stirred the leaves overhead, their rustle a low, uneasy chorus. A distant dog barked once, then silence reclaimed the scene. The officer took a step back, hand hovering near his holster, posture rigid with expectation. "Ma'am, hands where I can see them," he commanded, voice steady but edged with tension. Judge Monroe raised her arms slowly, palms outward in a gesture of compliance and confidence. Her sleeves slipped back a fraction, revealing the silver band of her watch and the soft sheen of pearl cufflinks beneath. She held that position, shoulders squared, chin level, her composed silhouette framed by the patrol car's flashing lights. For a heartbeat, time seemed to suspend. The gravel at her feet, the distant hum of traffic on the arterial road, and the officer's measured breaths all merged into a tableau of authority and expectation. Then, in a voice as measured as her movements, she said, "Officer, may I ask why you've drawn your weapon?" The question hung in the air, turning the tables on the encounter. The officer's hand froze mid-air, flashlight wavering as his jaw tensed. Under the street lamp's glow, they regarded one another, judge and lawman, each bound by duty yet divided by assumption. And in that charged stillness, the true test of respect and protocol was about to unfold. The officer's flashlight beam danced over Judge Monroe's poised figure, throwing her sharp silhouette against the dark hedges lining Maplewood Avenue. He clicked his pen open and began pacing in slow circles, eyes darting between her and his notebook. The hush of suburban night was punctuated only by the distant thrum of a lone late-night commuter and the rustle of leaves stirred by a cool breeze. Leaning close to the driver's window, the officer's tone sharpened. "Ma'am, There's been a string of burglaries up the street last week. Homes broken into, expensive items stolen. A witness described a dark sedan like yours speeding away from one of the scenes. Then just last night, there was a hit and run at the corner of Elm and Pine, same make and model. He tapped the roof of her car. Are you sure you haven't been in that area? Judge Monroe kept her expression calm, voice measured. Officer, I leave the courtroom at 7 every evening and head straight home to review case files. I'm unfamiliar with any of those incidents. She reached into her jacket pocket and retrieved a small card embossed with her name and judicial seal. If it helps, I work only and live 2 blocks from here. I have no connection to those crimes. He folded his arms and studied her profile in the flashlight's glare. Your story doesn't match the witness statements, and speeding 5 miles over the limit is hardly an accident. You sounded more than casual back there. His pen hovered over the notebook, poised to jot down her every word. Monroe lowered her eyes briefly, then met his gaze without hesitation. Officer, I respect your duty to investigate, but I assure you I was not in those neighborhoods last night. The speeding was unintentional. I was returning documents to my chambers after reviewing evidence for tomorrow's docket. You may verify my alibi with the courthouse security cameras. The officer's jaw clenched. He exhaled slowly, flashlight beam trembling with the weight of his next move. Around them, the street seemed to grow colder, as though holding its breath for his decision. The rainbow of patrol lights pulsed behind him, painting her navy suit in alternating bands of red and blue, an unspoken reminder that authority and assumption now hung in precarious balance. Judge Monroe stood motionless under the pulsating red and blue glow of the patrol car's taillights, the air between her and the officer thick with unspoken tension. The breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying the distant hum of a late-night freeway. She inhaled quietly, then reached into the crook of her arm where the leather briefcase rested. Its soft patina spoke of countless court sessions and solemn duties. With deliberate composure, she unlatched the brass clasp and swung the case open on the hood of her sedan. The officer's flashlight beam followed her every movement, illuminating the polished wood interior of the briefcase. Inside lay neatly arranged folders, a fountain pen clipped to a legal pad, and, nestled in a velvet-lined leather holder, her official judicial identification. She lifted the holder and slid it from its slot. The patrolman's brow furrowed as she clicked the holder open with a soft snap. The gold-embossed seal of the state judiciary glimmered under the flashlight's beam, along with her photograph, name, and title. The Honorable Cassandra Monroe, Circuit Court Judge. For a moment, the only sound was that of the night breeze and the distant tick of the courthouse clock she knew so well. The officer's eyes widened, his flashlight wavering as he leaned forward to read the ID. The authority she carried, far greater than his own, shone from the card in her hand. He straightened abruptly, snapping to attention. His jaw worked for a moment as he gathered his composure, then cleared his throat. The adrenaline that had stiffened his posture drained away, leaving him feeling suddenly small beneath the weight of her calm command. Without a word, Judge Monroe closed the holder and replaced it in her briefcase, which she snapped shut with the same assured click. She looked up at the officer, her gaze steady and unyielding. I trust that confirms my identity and clears up any misunderstanding. He swallowed, nodding rapidly. Yes, Your Honor, I apologize for the inconvenience. His voice trembled with genuine contrition. The patrol car's flashing lights softened as he stepped back, radioing all clear into his mic. In the stillness that followed, the only movement was the gentle sway of her briefcase in her hand and the retreating footsteps of the officer as he closed the gap between protocol and respect. The night had shifted, and with a quiet dignity, Judge Monroe prepared to reclaim her journey home. In the sudden hush that followed the flash of her judicial ID, the night air felt colder, as if the street itself recoiled from the shift in authority. The patrol car's red and blue lights still danced across the hedges, but the officer's stance had gone from rigid to uncertain. his training colliding with the reality in front of him. He ran a hand through his hair, the small beads of sweat on his brow visible in the harsh beam of his flashlight. His radio crackled in his hand, but he let it fall to his side as he struggled to find his voice. Around them, the distant echo of a passing freight truck and the soft chirp of a lone cricket punctuated the awkward silence. "Your Honor," he began, swallowing hard. His badge, affixed to his chest, seemed suddenly insignificant beneath the gold seal she carried. He cleared his throat, attempting formality but landing in genuine remorse. I'm so sorry." "I had no idea." Judge Monroe remained perfectly still, briefcase clasped at her side, her expression measured but not unkind. The officer's shoulders slumped as the weight of his mistake settled in. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, until he stood almost beneath the street lamp's glow, face illuminated in a mixture of relief and embarrassment. "I should never have drawn my weapon or raised my voice like that," he continued, voice cracking. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew his cap, removing it in a gesture of respect. "I let assumptions and fear guide my actions. You did nothing wrong." "I apologize, ma'am." Under the lamp, Judge Monroe's features softened slightly. She inclined her head, signifying both forgiveness and the restoration of her authority. "Thank you, officer," she replied quietly. "I appreciate your apology, and I understand your duty to keep the community safe. I trust this will be a reminder that respect must be mutual." The officer's eyes glistened in the lamplight as he replaced his cap and lifted his gaze to meet hers. He radioed in a follow-up, confirming the stop was concluded without incident and requested no further dispatch presence. Then, with a final nod, he stepped back to allow her passage. As Judge Monroe moved to open her car door, the patrol car's lights finally switched off, leaving only the steady glow of the street lamp. The officer stood beside his cruiser, head bowed respectfully, until she settled behind the wheel. In that moment of contrition and grace, both had been reminded that true authority rests not in fear or force, but in the balance of duty and honor. As Judge Monroe slid behind the wheel of her black sedan, the street lamp overhead spilled its golden pool of light across the asphalt, illuminating a small crowd of early morning joggers, a curious neighbor peering from her front porch, and the officer's cruiser idling now in respectful silence. The tension that had gripped the night moments before now dissolved into a hush, broken only by the soft click of door locks and the distant rumble of passing traffic. Several joggers, wrapped in reflective gear and earbuds dangling, paused on the sidewalk, exchanging astonished glances. One young woman, mid-stride, slowed to a stop and reached for her phone, but kept it at her side as she watched the scene unfold. A pair of teenagers leaned against a chain-link fence, wide-eyed, silent witnesses to an authority they had never imagined confronting its own mistake. Across the way, an elderly neighbor in slippers and a nightgown stood framed in her doorway, arms crossed but face alight with curiosity. She whispered to her husband on the other side of the doorframe, their heads bobbing as they both observed Judge Monroe's calm professionalism and the officer's deferent stance. The soft glow from their living room spilled onto the porch, adding a warm backdrop to the tableau forming on Maplewood Avenue. The officer approached her passenger door, hat in hand and steps measured. He met her gaze through the glass, voice low and sincere. "Ma'am, I'll escort you home." His grip on the door handle was careful, as though afraid to disturb the still-lingering lesson in respect and humility. Judge Monroe nodded once, expelling a measured breath, and gave the slightest smile, an acknowledgement that decorum and compassion could coexist with justice. As they drove forward, the cruiser's lights faded into the distance, and Maplewood Avenue returned to its normal rhythm. The joggers resumed their route, now speaking in hushed tones about what they had witnessed. Neighbors retreated indoors to share the story with spouses and children, a living parable of power checked by integrity. In the quiet aftermath, the empty street held a new resonance. Authority wielded wisely demands respect, but authority abused can only be redeemed by the courage to admit error. And as Judge Monroe's taillights vanished around the corner, the witnesses, once passive observers, carried with them a reminder that justice is not merely a title, but a practice lived in every interaction. The cruiser's flashing lights receded around the bend, and an enveloping stillness settled over Maplewood Avenue. Judge Monroe eased herself into the driver's seat, the soft hiss of the door seal fading into the night. The leather beneath her palms was cool and reassuring as she clasped the steering wheel, its grain tracing familiar ridges against her fingertips. She didn't rush. Instead, she paused to inhale deeply, tasting the faint scent of pine from the hedges and the lingering tang of asphalt warmed by the day's traffic. Behind her, the patrol car's engine idled once, then shut off with a final click, leaving only the distant hum of freeway headlights on the horizon. Through the windshield, the street lamp's pool of golden light framed her silhouette, a lone figure clad in navy blue, poised between two worlds of authority and humility. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard, 12:27 a.m., exactly 20 minutes from the first pullover. As she shifted the car into drive, the engine's whispered growl seemed to acknowledge her composed strength. The convertible of the previous story had roared. Tonight, the judge's sedan purred, an understated declaration of control. She eased onto the quiet road, tires rolling over the fine gravel of the shoulder before merging onto the smooth blacktop. The street signs passed in soft focus. Elm Street, 0.3 mi. Pine Avenue, 0.5 mi. Each marker a reminder of the neighborhoods she protected. Inside the cabin, the low glow of the instrument panel cast her face in muted relief. She reached up and adjusted the rear-view mirror, catching a glimpse of the patrol car's silhouette disappearing into the night. Its rotating red and blue beam vanished, leaving only the warm street lamp glow in her mirror. Cassandra allowed herself a small, satisfied smile, no triumph in her expression, only the quiet contentment of justice served. Her briefcase lay on the passenger seat, its weight a familiar comfort. She pressed a button on the dash to raise the windows, letting in a breeze scented faintly with honeysuckle from a nearby garden. The air carried a symphony of nocturnal life, the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of leaves stirred by the wind, and the faint drip of a lawn sprinkler somewhere beyond the hedges. As she navigated the two-lane road toward home, she contemplated the night's events. The encounter had tested every precept she upheld in courtrooms: respect for process, the presumption of innocence, and the importance of verifying facts before acting. She thought of the officer's momentary rigidity, then his fulsome apology, how power, when tempered by humility, restored the balance of justice. At the next intersection, she paused at the stop sign. The traffic light's amber glow reflected in her windshield, mirroring the vigil she maintained as a jurist. When it turned green, she pressed the accelerator gently, the sedan responding with smooth assurance. Shadowed houses passed by, some dark behind drawn curtains, others aglow with late-night lights, each home a testament to the community she served. Just before reaching her driveway, she slowed and glanced at the passenger seat, where her briefcase's brass clasp caught the street lamp's reflection one last time. She gave a slight nod, an unspoken vow to carry tonight's lesson forward in every courtroom decision, every interaction with officers and citizens alike. With a final, measured turn of the wheel, Judge Cassandra Monroe pulled into her garage. The engine's hum tapered off as she shifted into park and switched off the headlights. She sat for a moment in the cocoon of silence, letting the weight of the night's events settle into resolve. Then, with decisive calm, she unbuckled her seatbelt, collected her briefcase, and stepped into the soft glow of her home's foyer light, ready to rest, reflect, and tomorrow to continue upholding the dignity and integrity of the law she so steadfastly served.